November CWCB Board Meeting, and our next item is the Basin Directors Reports. So we'll start with Denver Metro and Director Brody.
Thank you so much, and good to be back for day two. I'll keep my remarks brief so that we can try to stay on schedule today. I did not put together a PowerPoint. The one thing that I did want to highlight, I know we heard in some of the other reports yesterday about some upcoming legislation, and one that I wanted to highlight because we've had a number of conversations around this theme at this table, is a bill that Denver Water has been working on to prohibit new installations of non-functional turf in certain areas. So this would not affect residential, but it would affect areas like medians, tree lawns, other common areas like that. And like I said, I know in the past we've had a lot of really active conversation around what's the state's role. And given everything going on the Colorado River, given the realities that we face as a state around the state in terms of aridification, given the momentum, I think, behind turf replacement, we thought this was the right time to introduce this bill, because if we as a state are going to be investing in removing non-functional turf on a voluntary basis, seems like we should also have some baseline prohibitions around not putting new non-functional turf in. So this was heard by the Interim Water Resources and Agricultural Review Committee a few weeks ago and was passed out of that committee. I understand Roberts is going to be the sponsor of this bill. And so just excited about that. We have at Denver Water affectionately named it the Happy Medians Bill. And we'll be happy to share progress once the legislature kicks into gear. Thank you.
Are there any questions for her? Okay, thank you. Let's go to the Rio Grande and Director Cohn.
Thank you. So on the Rio Grande, of course, we're like everyone else in the ag, finishing up the season and getting pumping numbers in, and our sub districts are going to be very busy accounting and getting fees put out. One of the things that came up, we've got the swag case, of course, was refiled. And so everybody's prepping for what that's going to look like in its new version. It doesn't look like it's got too much variance to what it was originally intended, but it's back on the palette here. We'll see where it goes. One of the other things we're doing right there in the basin this time of year, we really get after the rivers as far as being able to get the restoration and rehab work. And if you looked at the email that we got yesterday from Director Reese, you saw the Restoration Foundation got $1.3 million for the Farmers Union there on the Rio Grande. That's been a trouble spot on that river for a long time. It's been a very prohibitive crossing, and for boats, for anglers, for everything. And so I'm ecstatic about the amount of work they do. That Restoration Foundation started off as kind of a little seedling, and they have just, of course, it started off with Heather Dutton. You may know her, and then of course Emma Reese, rack your memory. And then of course Emma Reese took off and really was a slingshot moving it forward, and Daniel Boyce is not a step behind in what he's doing. And they're really doing a lot for our basin. I'll tell you, they're working in almost every sub-basin drainage now on the rivers with restoration, with rehab. They're working with all of the conservancy districts and the NRCS. It's a different time for us in the basin that have been so strictly ag to be able to see the benefits of this partnering with the environment rec and the restoration. So I'm just excited about what we did and what they're doing is what I should say. So really that's it. We're just staying on top of the heap and trying to work our tails off to be the best basin in the state.
Oh man, it's lonely at the top, isn't it? Awesome. Any questions for Director Combs? Well, I don't believe Jackie's with us. Yeah, she emailed me. She's really not feeling well, so we don't have a report from the AMPA today. So we'll go to the Colorado River with Director Boucher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I promised Director Riss that I would keep this to 60 seconds yesterday, but I might be fibbing. It might have to be more like 120 seconds. You know, within the course of this week, we've heard a lot about Colorado River stuff. Yesterday's meeting, in particular, Rob gave us a great update about the connectivity channel. And so I want to kind of take this a different direction in honor of Director Ryan's service and, his comments yesterday. I was thinking about it. I was like, why do I like this guy so much? It's amazing. And then I was thinking about it and I was like, why do I like everybody in water so much? It's kind of bizarre. And the kickoff of the C9 Summit, Mr. Sands, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was Russell George that said consensus can move mountains. And, I look in this room at the relationships that exist, and it's not just with the directors, it's not just with staff, it's with our visitors out here today, that all these stories of how we know each other and how it works and what that ultimately equals in trust and what we learn about each other. And with that kind of trust, this week, just a few stories. If I don't call your name, I don't want you to feel bad, but I've learned a lot about Director Vasquez and her sense of humor. Director Combs doesn't know it yet, but my dad's actually got the Land Cruiser waiting in his shop right now for some work this weekend. I learned a lot of things that Director Cloud and I have in common, and especially why the letter L is important to her. And I learned that Director Sakata and I not only are passionate about growing food, but also the Denver Broncos. And I think that for, all of this with, there was a time when I said it was like 2002 where Lurleen drugged me and I got run over by the water bus. But I think I actually jumped on board to the water bus. And with that trust and all of these relationships and the timing of things going on with our state, I would leave this that I do believe that trust builds consensus and that we can move mountains. So that is my message of hope. And with that, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Director Boucher. Any questions for him?
Paul, how do I put this? I guess like our hope in our Denver Broncos, I think, we struggle with it sometimes, but I don't know how to put this. But I guess I really appreciate your comments too, because I think there's so much more that we can learn, and that's what makes it exciting. And I'm including some remarks in my presentation too. It's the humanity of water is really what makes it fun and exciting. So thank you for all that you do. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And even when your hopes and dreams don't come true, you can always enjoy a hot dog. On to the San Juan San Miguel Dolores with Director Cloud.
Thank you. And thank you, Paul, for what you do. We're glad that you're here with us today. I know that you have challenges and we all do, but thank you for everything. With that, I also like to thank our veterans for your service. I know that we just had Veterans Day, so I just want to thank them for what they do for us. So thank you. And November is the Native American Heritage Month. And yesterday was the National Rock Your Mocks Day. So I wore my moccasins. I'm wearing them again today, just to remind myself who I am and where I come from. So back to my report. I know irrigation season is pretty much at the end. So now my area has been kind of quiet in a way. We're gearing up for winter and preparing for the snow coming in, which I hope that we get a lot of snow. Ski season has officially begun in my region, with Wolf Creek has now opened on Saturday, November 11th. And as of November 9th, the snow water equivalent is 22% of normal, which is good. I know now we're starting to talk about snows in our reports. So I'm really happy. I love snow. I love the wintertime. That's snow is everything for us. As we know, that's where we get our water. So I'm very thankful for reporting on snow. And we know that The Front Range is also, I think we're getting snow today, correct? Where mountains are getting snow, so thank goodness for that. The construction on the Florida Canal and diversion and the Headgate rehab was funded by CWCB, and that has officially begun. So we're very thankful for that as well too. And I don't know if you know Jenny Russell. She is retiring from her water law, and so she will be stepping down from the Southwest Water Conservation District Board President. So elections for that, the Conservation District will begin in January of 2024 for their new, their meeting to begin in 2024. She was also the former board roundtable member and Southwest Water Conservation Board member as well too. So we wish her well in her retirement. Everybody seems to be retiring lately, so hopefully new and more dynamic people are taking and filling in those seats. Director Ryan, again, I wish you the best in your next chapter. You will be missed. And then and I don't know if anybody has a chance to see the document on public PBS that recently featured the Southwest area on a video and an article about the water scarcity in households in Pagosa and also on tribal lands. So if you haven't, please try and find that and look at that. It's pretty good. The Dolores River monitoring team is hosting a webinar to report on the 2023 season. So hopefully you can also get a hold of that as well too. And that's for their water year for the Dolores River and the McPhee Dam. And in the San Miguel area, the San Miguel Watershed Coalition is processing a restoration on beavers to the landscape, which will benefit and process the that area for their soil projects. That is, I can't wait to see that completed. I think that's going to be really good for that area. And also the Chatfield Ditch and Diversion Rehab Project is aligned with the different strategies in the San Miguel River near the Nutrita, Colorado. And so more information on that project is coming forward as well too. But other than that, again, we're just gearing up for snow.
Dr. Cloud. I see Director Anderson. There he is. Morning, Steve.
Good morning. I guess I'd start by echoing the conversations and congratulations to Kevin Rain. Kevin, your time as the state engineer corresponds pretty much exactly with my time on the conservation board. I particularly admire your work and think the work that you've done on the Colorado is just outstanding. I remember several years ago when you kind of diffused the panic of a lower basin call on the river, and that certainly appreciate and thank you for your service. Also, congratulations to Anna Moss and Cole Bedford. Those are the right moves in my opinion, and good luck in the future. In the Gunnison Basin, we've had an absolutely beautiful fall, possibly too beautiful because we haven't had the snowstorms. And the drought areas I see on the western slope continue to increase, although at possibly a slower pace than we've seen in the past. I guess I do have some concern about the drought and what our snowpack might yield eventually, because it's going to take some of that pack to get the soil moisture up. We haven't had a roundtable, Gunnison Basin roundtable meeting. We do have one Monday, and I guess I heard yesterday that we're going to have a special guest there, so I'm very much looking forward to that. In concluding, I'd like to be one of the first to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, a very Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. And thank you.
Miss you being here, but it's great to see your face on the screen. Any questions for him? Is North Platte with Director Vasquez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to echo Paul's comments, which ride on Kevin's amazing presentation about his retirement. The humanity around this room allows us not only to enjoy each other's company, but to, when we do disagree, to disagree in a non-disagreeable way. This is a very important human skill set so that we can come to consensus and move things forward. So I just want to thank you for articulating all of that. And Kevin, enjoy your retirement. We will miss you. I just have a few comments about the North Platte. Most of the ranchers who are going to be moving cattle to market or to pasture lower elevations have done so. It's been a dry fall. We've had very little snow. And as Steve indicated, a little concerned whether El Nino will reach us with its blessing of snow. We have not had a roundtable meeting since our last CWCB meeting. And in addition to that, I had a family medical emergency. So I've not been in the basin much in the last month and a half. So with that, I'm going to conclude my remarks and wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Vasquez. Any questions for her? Platt? Director Sakata.
Well, as per my tradition, I always like to thank the city that hosted us at our last meeting. And Chairman Felt, I can't tell you how much I appreciated visiting your wonderful city. Salado, it's wonderful. I really, really enjoyed it. Thanks again to Michelle, the catered food, amazing food that we had there. And of course, the great interactions that we had there as well. Slides. Here we go. And probably the thing that I enjoyed the most was going out for the run one morning and just the serenity of the environment there. It just was really recharging. You can see it a little bit in this picture, but just the calming effect of the sound of the water running, that silent fog that reached from bank to bank just seemed to suspend the mountains in the background. And it really recharged my soul being there and to see that. It was just fantastic. And of course, the recreation activities on the river there were so amazing to see. Upper right-hand corner is a vegetable garden that I saw as I was running by the city and county building. And the bottom right-hand picture I thought was just so telling in the sense that in my neighborhood, most likely we're going to see a dozer working, and then we'll see the carving of a deer on a rock. Only in Salida, you can see a carving of a dozer and a deer running by. It was amazing. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed that time in the city, and it really brought things into perspective. So thank you so much, Greg, for that opportunity and for hosting us there. And then right after that, I was able to go to Grand Junction for the Colorado River District seminar. As usual, Amy did a wonderful job on the panel that they had about the Colorado River issues. Senator Roberts, Representative Catlin were both there on a panel. Really enjoyed the interactions that get-togethers like that happen. And then, speaking of Director Ryan, I had the opportunity to attend 2 meetings in the South Platte Basin about the proposed canal that Nebraska, the Perkins County Canal that is being proposed to be built. This was the one meeting in Sterling. It was a packed house, standing room only. Kevin, you did a fantastic job of, again, providing the facts on that. And I think that's what people needed to hear. I think that transparency is critical. And then we traveled on to Julesburg, and again, it was a big audience there, and you did a great job there as well. And thanks also to CWCB staff that traveled there. It's hard to see the lower right-hand corner, though, is the odometer on my pickup. That's the big news. I hit 500,000 miles. Yay! And Barbara, I brought this so you could see. This is how I did it, was with my Yeah, this is my this is my all natural, stay awake.
Organic.
Yeah, it's our organic stay awake.
Yeah, but is it organic?
Yeah, that's true. But really, for everything that our chairman does, I want to present him with one as well, if I can find it. So there you go.
Oh,
Chairman
wow.
Wells. I got you your very own.
Personalized.
Yeah, personalized ones.
You know, we were pretty religious about using our clothesline, and I'm usually the guy out there
Clipping it up
picking
there.
everything up. So this is great.
Well, thanks
Good in
for all
my
you
truck.
do.
Thank you.
Now you're bona fide.
Exactly. Well, I was thinking of offering it to the staff. Maybe actually I need it. And you clip the pin on right when you start talking, and you talk only as long as you can handle the pain. But then it would have to apply to me and I'd be in big trouble all the time. And then off to Avon, really Colorado Sustainable Watersheds Conference was really amazing. They had a pre-session workshop on low-tech process-based restoration, which I really enjoyed. We broke up into small groups and actually got to take a stream segment and set up the plan ourselves. And it was really great. A panel on stream restoration legislation. Everybody did a great job on that panel as well. And then just the beautiful environment is the picture on the right in Avon. Back one, sorry. After that, there was an optional tour of the Eagle River. Again, really to see the restoration efforts, and really unique in the sense that it's really a tourist environment. So how do you do stream restoration when there's so much tourist activity going on? And then also how Avon is dealing with the stream temperature standards with their waste coming out and some of the activities doing there. So I really appreciated that. But then coming back home from Avon is when I actually got the sad news about Barbara Biggs passing, and fellow directors have mentioned it as well. She was an amazing person. I didn't realize this until I started thinking about it, but I have known her for almost 30 years, got to know her when I served on the Water Quality Control Commission. And I used to give her a hard time because she was with Metro District at that time. And for our board package, she would submit documents that were a couple thousand pages long. And I would talk with her, and it was always interesting because she would kind of agree with me. She would go, yeah, Robert, yeah. But then she would go, but, and she would have some good points. And she always had this wonderful smile, wonderful sense of humor. And I always loved that she wanted to be really inclusive of everybody's thoughts and opinions. She was just such a thoughtful person, and one that we'll really, really, really miss in this water world. You know, like many of you that I see here were able to attend her service, that the wide breadth of lives that she touched when you looked at the people that were in attendance. And I think that sometimes it would be great to have our young people there to see that see how we all can affect others' lives in ways that you don't know about. And so as we work through all these issues, it's kind of a sobering reminder that it's really easy to get trapped in the minutia of the conflicts that we face. But as has been mentioned here, it's what's really, I think, more important is that life is too short, that we really understand the humanity behind all of this, how that is really, really what is important. So thank you, Barb. Thanks for everything that you've done and all the lives that you've touched. So this is my one farm drone video. This is pinto bean harvest. We windrow the pinto beans. Right below the drone, you'll see some bare ground. So this is a half circle center pivot irrigation. And normally we do actually irrigate what's right underneath the drone. But in January, the snowpack for the South Platte or upper South Platte was really low. And so we decided to fallow that piece of ground. It ended up, we could have farmed it. There are actually some crops that do a lot better with furrow irrigation than sprinkler irrigation. And so that's why when we have the opportunity, we like to utilize those corners. This is the restoration of Fort Lupton, the actual fort. Central Colorado Conservancy District was actually sponsoring a children's water festival that day. So that's why you saw the cars and the buses in the background. Some pictures, the top right-hand corners at the fort, barn restoration with the kids around it. The bottom right-hand pictures, the city of Thornton was there. I thought that van was kind of cool. Wasting water is like, what does it say? Wasting water is like driving during rush hour for the fun of it. And then the kids in the canoe on the left. It was really a fun event. I think they had over 1,000 students attend, 44 different classrooms, 33 different presentations. It was just an amazing event. And then the upper left-hand corner is Central also provided a tour of their Walker recharge facilities, which CWCB has helped support. Amazing the series of wells that they developed and a structure to be able to move water, to pump water to augment out of priority pumping for wells. I really appreciate that opportunity as well. There's some stuff that I wanted to talk about. Right after that, I was able to go to Grand Junction. This is for the Metro State University's Upper Colorado Water Seminar. And the second day was on Halloween. So the picture in the center, I'm sure was some scientific experiment that the college was doing to verify the laws of physics, I guess. It was a pumpkin drop that they were doing on the middle of campus that day. But again, this picture is set up too to show the dichotomy of personalities that we have here on the board. I was really fortunate that Director Cloud was a keynote speaker at this conference. And Director Cloud, you do an amazing job presenting. I think it's really because you speak from your heart, your sincerity about it, your genuineness about it, that a topic that's often difficult to talk about. I think you do a wonderful job of carrying that message forward. So thank you. Compared to that, you'll see Director Sakata on the left, dressed up as an ear of sweet corn. I know, Lauren, I know reappointments are coming up. You might want to consider this.
Yeah, make sure you
and then just this past Monday, Metro Water Recovery was doing electrofishing on the South Platte River right next to one of our fields. So this is drone footage of that. They do this, I think 2 or 3 times a year. Again, just and it's really wonderful. I have the opportunity to go down there and join them to really take a look and then see what's there in the river. And I really appreciate that opportunity. And I should have had this drone go up a little farther so you could see our field would actually be on the right, and they really appreciate that agricultural operation because there was some kind of development going on the left that I didn't realize until I had the drone flying up there that some of the cottonwoods are now gone that were along that side. You kind of see a little brief part of it there. I need to investigate more what's going on there. This is my last slide. This is actually a picture of sunset from close to where I live. I hope it's not a sign of the times because today that we had a new state engineer appointed. This is a clip from Ag Clips, and Kevin, it really does seem like yesterday when you took the lead. I feel so fortunate that I had, of course, had the opportunity to work with you before that. I still remember when you sat down with me and talked about the consumptive use modeling efforts that were going on, hopefully, to make it easier to do some of the transfers and the creativeness that we had. And your enthusiasm about that, I didn't know how I was going to get out of the office because, you were just so enthusiastic about that, but I really appreciated everything that you did. So, it's been kind of our tradition for our CWCB to take this November, a time of Thanksgiving, to think about what we're thankful for. And Kevin, I really am thankful that I had the opportunity to work with you. It's really been a pleasure. So thank you very much for all that you do, and best wishes in your future as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Sakata. Director Ryan.
May I add a comment really quick? And Director Sakata, I was queuing up these comments even before your flattering last couple comments of yours. But this is a comment I believe that I could make and we all could make at each board meeting. And at the risk of pointing out the obvious, I'll say it out loud. The reason Director Sakata has so many photos to show us is because he is so actively engaged in water issues in the South Platte and statewide. And I thought about this as you showed the photos from Sterling, and then later we were in Julesburg, as you pointed out. And the fact that you were there, not just at one meeting, but at both meetings, just speaks so well of you. And I'm going to confess that I use you as a little bit of a crutch, because when I'm up there speaking, and it's sometimes difficult, and I wonder whether I'm making my point, whether I'm landing a point, whether this is rational and supported. It's easy to look at Director Sakata and see that familiar head nod of acknowledgement. And you get a little comfort from that and a little confidence knowing that, yeah, it's making sense. So that's just a specific piece of that, but how engaged you are. It's to his credit and the benefit of the board that he does that. So thank you for that.
Sure, because it's really because of the shoulders of individuals like you. It really, really is. So thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments? Said you what I need to, but really, really have enjoyed working with you. And put together, and I feel like we'll be in good hands because of that, the depth of the bench, so to speak. So thank you for everything. And I'm hoping maybe we can get on the water in the year ahead under different circumstances. Knowledge, all the staff that were involved in C9. The fantastic meeting. And having Russ George there, sort of the architect of as the kind of water me. I think it's probably struck everyone, but and looking out, being up there on the stage and looking out at everybody and thinking like so many of these people probably wouldn't know each other. They certainly wouldn't know each other in the way that they do if it wasn't for creation of the roundtables and the IBCC and this sort of, you know, this whole house that we're all part of. And so Drought Summit this year, I'm sure Russ remembers that too. That was, guys have done just an awful lot of work since the issuance of the water plan. Sentiment that's in that document and to help set the tone, right? Because I mean, as almost everyone has said today, probably, you know, this is an amazing group and we have a great vibe and fun and respect and all these things. It's really wonderful. But you look around those rooms at both of those sessions and they were kind of somewhat different audiences, but like Lauren said, I would say of both of those events, you looked out over the audience, there were a lot of people that you didn't even know too. And that's the sign, I think, of really making an impact. You're enrolling more people in the conversation, making them feel welcome. Many of us can look back and remember some event like that we participated in that sort of lit a fire or made us feel like, hey, I got something to contribute here. Or that's really interesting. This water stuff isn't just complicated, it's interestingly complicated. I'm gonna learn more about this. So Lauren and I had a little exchange yesterday about these summit meetings, and it's not realistic to have 2 a year, I don't think. Yeah, Daddy-o. And but I'm hoping we can do one. Staying away from the Water Congress, but these are really different from that. And I think it's much more of a doorway that people can walk through. easily and inexpensively, as was pointed out, all are welcome. So I would just encourage us to think about that. How do we? And then also coming out of that, I really like the idea of this board convening with the Basin Roundtable chairs. Maybe, I think that's. Hope we can work on that as the year goes on. Like Robert, I've been to quite a few water meetings in the last 2 months. Didn't take a picture of a single one. I think never crosses my mind. I don't know. But yeah, it's taken up a lot of time, but it's time really well spent. Really, really enjoy it. One thing I wanted to tell you about that little initiative we have, I've mentioned over the last several years that I've been hosting and organizing water panels at Colorado County Zinc, CCI. So done that. We do a winter conference and a summer conference, and I've been doing that for the last 4 conferences. Dan's been involved in several. Becky's been there. We've got one coming up right after Thanksgiving, and we're taking a new tack that I'm excited about. Historically, CCI has stayed away from water because of its capacity to cause conflict. And I think particularly as regards Trans Mountain diversions, it's just, they're always concerned about trying to hold the group together and not creating division. But when we started this, we took the approach of like, well, this is educational. So we're going to try not to get real, but just help people learn and understand. And so what we're doing this time, I've worked with Jayla Poppleton and her staff to take the forget what they call it, demystifying water for state legislators, and sort of massage that into a similar class for county commissioners. Because there's about 200 county commissioners in the state, probably 150 of them or so will probably be at CCI. And so that'll be the opening session. It's kind of brief. It's an hour and a half. We've worked through a lot. Dan's going to help us with this, giving an overview of the state water agencies. But I was really excited yesterday. Wendell Kuntz, who introduced in the morning, Delta County Commissioner, who's Denison Roundtable Chair, agreed to join Kathy Chandler Henry and me as towards the end of that session, we're going to talk about how county commissioners can better engage in the water conversation, acknowledging that very few counties have a real direct involvement in water supply, but help people understand that there's actually tremendous opportunities to be a part of the conversation. And I think because of our elected status, we have a tremendous ability to convene conversations, even if you're not the featured speaker or the knowledgeable person in the room. You can still, just by saying you're going to dig into something, bring everybody to the table. Maybe it's out of fear more than interest or enthusiasm, but whatever works. So I'm really excited about that. And that's just coming up in a couple weeks. That, Dan. And then just on the Arkansas, at those slides and the other day, and just I was thinking like, there's crack hose all over this state, tearing things down and building things up, and you don't know what you're looking at. It's not that impressive, but when you live with this the structure in your community, I mean, it's been there since I started boating on the Arkansas in 1984. It's been there longer than that, but it's been like this kind of monster in the corner in my life all that time. And fortunately, I've never gone over the dam, but I've pulled other people out who have. And just really, it's a small thing in a way, but it's one of these things where a community actually feels like we accomplished something positive and change. So I want to thank you guys again for getting on it. yeah, we're going to celebrate it. The Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend, there's a community float. And we're all going to float a little strip of the river we've never floated before. So it's pretty cool. Because you all have made such a big investment in the Arkansas Valley Conduit. That project is really ripping along. And, you know, I always feel like once you get something in the ground, it's so rare that you don't see it all the way through. But Senator Hickenlooper and Senator Bennett were there for our, whatever you call that, ribbon cutting or whenever, you know, you put the shovels in the ground. What do you call that? Groundbreaking. Yeah, groundbreaking. And Hickenlooper was exhorting us to finish it faster than what we had proposed, but I mean, it is really moving along. So we may well end up doing that. And that's another one of these things where the photos don't do it justice, but when 50,000 people in the lower basin start getting water you can drink and enjoy, that's going to be a fantastic day. And I continue to think challenges this will contribute to greater community vitality down there and opportunities for the future. Wish you all a great holiday season with hopefully with loved ones and you know, the opportunity to share that. Yeah, really appreciate getting to know all you, work with all of you, and I'll be thinking about you over that time. Miracles. We just did the basin reports in 40 minutes. It's got to be a record. So I would propose that we forego the morning break and just plow on through. But according to the agenda, we only have about an hour more of actual items. So that's okay with everybody. I'd like to move on to item 20, the project bill loans and Old Bedford. Yeah, we'll probably get totally stuck on water loss.
All right, for the record, Cole Bedford, CWCB staff. This is the first of two projects bill loan items for you to consider this morning. This is agenda item 20A, water project loan increase request for the Windy Gap firming project. And this is being undertaken by the municipal subdistrict of the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District. So this is a big ticket item. So I'm just going to give you some of the highest level information here and then introduce some folks from Northern. So the current contracted amount on this loan, and this is the main component of the project, is the Chimney Hollow dam construction. The current contracted amount is $90 million. That was approved by this board and the General Assembly in 2017. And, you know, as might be expected, costs have increased since 2017. So the municipal subdistrict has formally requested an increase of $65,650,000. And that request was provided to you all at the Finance Committee meeting. And if this increase is approved, the total loan amount then would be $155,650,000. The loan terms on that would stay the same. And so with that kind of primer out of the way, I am going to hand things off. We've got some representatives from Northern. We have Jeff Drager, Joe Donnelly, Stephanie Cecil, Jonathan Hernandez, and Sander Blackburn. And I think Jonathan is.
I'm glad we got here a little early. So congrats on the 40 minutes. I'll try to keep you guys still on track here. I will say we have tried to pare down this presentation. As you might imagine, there is a ton of information out there that we can share, and we love talking about our projects. And if you have hard-hitting questions, that's why there's people behind me. Joe Donnelly is the project manager that's out on site, and we decided he probably wouldn't be the best person to give the presentation because he would want to tell you about everything. But if you have questions about everything, he's right behind me. As Cole mentioned, my name is Jonathan Hernandez for the record. I'm a senior project manager at Northern Water, focusing more on the financing side of our projects. And so I want to give you a brief update of this project, and again, keep it brief, high level of how this fits in with the municipal subdistrict, why this project was needed, and where we're at. With the Windy Gap project, and this, if you've been out to Granby and have seen the Windy Gap Reservoir or the Windy Gap State Wildlife Area, or the viewing area out there, that is the one reservoir currently for the Windy Gap project. And this project is owned and managed by the municipal subdistrict. And so that is a separate district from Northern Water. It shares the same board, shares the same staff, but legally distinct from Northern Water. And so that is the municipal subdistrict really created for and to operate this Windy Gap project. Windy Gap Reservoir was commissioned in 1985, and since then has been delivering about 18,000 acre feet per year to the participants. However, none of that water is firm or reliable. Windy Gap, the water rights are very junior. So in a dry year, there's not enough water to divert and pump up into the CBT system. And in wet years, there's not enough space in the CBT system. And so Windy Gap, it's out in Granby. To get the water out to the east slope, it uses the CBT reservoirs and canals through a carriage contract agreement. And because in wet years, if those reservoirs are full, we might be able to divert, we might be able to pump, but there's nowhere to put that water into the reservoir. And there's no canal capacity to transfer that water over. And so this was a known, I wouldn't say problem, but it was just a known issue from the beginning. And additional storage has always been envisioned for the Windy Gap project to solve this issue that technically there is no firm yield on the project. Gap firming project. And the main component of that is Chimney Hollow Reservoir. So we tend to use Windy Gap firming and Chimney Hollow Reservoir interchangeably. But the reason why we do is because Chimney Hollow is the biggest part of the Windy Gap firming project. So this is a new reservoir that is currently being built. If hopefully many of you have been able to go out there and tour this, it is just west of Carter Lake, just outside of Loveland. And this is the storage that will firm yield for the Windy Gap participants. About a 90,000 acre foot reservoir will create 30,000 acre feet of firm, reliable yield through the Windy Gap project. It is an off-channel reservoir, and it interconnects again with the CBT system. It is located just perfectly, so we're able to bring the water off of the CBT conveyances, store it in Chimney Hollow, and then use those again to get the water out into the participants. Knowing who the participants are of this. And usually when someone's giving a presentation, you know, at the very end is when they say, thank you for hearing this. Thank you for all of that. But I wanted to do that on this slide because really I'm here representing the municipal subdistrict, but the municipal subdistrict is representing these 12 participants. So the municipal subdistrict ourselves, it is not our money paying for this project. It is not our beneficial use of water. It is all for these participants here. From Central Willard County Water District down to Broomfield, you can see the mix of these municipalities here, and they are truly the ones that are benefiting from this project. They are truly the ones benefiting from the original CWCB loan of the 90 million that was subordinate, and they will ultimately be the ones benefiting from this loan increase if fully approved and executed. Into construction, again, we wanted to keep this kind of fairly short and simple, but I've listed here these components: the main dam, saddle dam, foundation grouting, tunneling down. All of these are in and of themselves major construction projects. As you might imagine, there is a lot is an understatement, and that's why I'm giving this presentation, because I can say a lot. Joe would then go into details of all these because they really are so cool. And again, we will always offer tours. We will always offer presentations. If you ever have that time to go into detail of what truly what is behind the scenes on this construction project. I will highlight the main dam because that is the main component of Chimney Hollow, the biggest one that, you know, people would see. And so this will be about a 350-foot dam. You can see some stats here: second tallest dam in Colorado, tallest dam built in 25 years. And what I'll highlight here is this asphalt core, and that is unique for United States. This is only the second asphalt core dam being built in the United States, but worldwide, this is a technology that is used. About 200 of them have been built worldwide. But because the expertise is more international, not to the United States, Wallow is a subcontractor that was hired. And so they have lots of experience building these asphalt core dams. And so what you're seeing here, and I'll show this next picture. This is the center line of the dam. About 3 feet wide is the asphalt. And this is basically a parking lot. But if you were to drive on this parking lot, you would see the ruts in there from your car. So it's formulated different than an asphalt parking lot. So it stays flexible. And that's highly beneficial in a dam like this to allow some settlement, some movement to occur. And the entire dam, as wide as it is, this really is the water stop, just this 3-foot core. And as they are paving this, it's kind of cool to see. You know, the first time you're seeing it, like, wow, this is amazing. They have their own specialized equipment. And then you kind of realize that they're just going back and forth and they're paving a sidewalk until it's 355 feet tall, and actually taller than that because, you know, you dig down. So the asphalt's more 400 some, and it's just paving that sidewalk back and forth. And as they're paving that, they're bringing up all the other zones. And so the entire embankment is coming up at once. And it's an impressive site. Again, please come out here and tour the site. We would love to have you. Main dam, you can see this is a cross section. We're about 135 feet tall. So if you go out there, you do see a dam. Looks kind of like an odd one because the top is very, very wide right now as we're coming up. But so yes, we're making good progress, about 135 feet. But then if you look at the other angle, you can see that yes, as we're coming up and the dam's going to get a little skinnier at the top, it's going to get much longer. So the previous slide's a little misleading of progress, but we are making progress. And I included this photo at the bottom. It's a zoomed out photo. Carter Lake is in the background, but in the foreground on the other side of that hogback, you can actually see from quite a distance away now this dam coming up. You don't have to be right next to it to see it. You're actually seeing it from views quite a way. Schedule. Again, this is all high level, and we can, if you have questions, we can get into these numbers, but looking mainly at Barnard contract. Barnard is the general contractor for this. We have many other contracts out there, but they're, you know, the largest. So focusing on that one. At their bid, which was December 2019, or that's when we signed the contract, they were bidding $485 million to build the dam. From December 2019, there were some delays, so we couldn't start construction right away. We were still in litigation and appeals for that. And so when we actually issued the notice to proceed, their contract price was already up by $508 million. And what I'll notice, what you might note in between kind of the bid contracted price and the notice to proceed price, when we signed that contract, we didn't know what COVID was. That was this was all pre-COVID. And then the delay to getting through litigation, that brought on COVID. And so a lot of what we saw in those price increases, you know, were just the supply chain issues that we were having, labor issues, just the unknown in the world of, as we were all trying to understand what COVID meant, what this would mean for construction. So that took, from the beginning, that took a large part of our contingency. About half of the contingency that we had for the project ended up going into the litigation delay. And that cost was mainly driven by such COVID was the largest driver on that. And so to date, the contract is sitting around $530 million. So we've been issuing change orders as we've been going through the foundation. And we have as we work, every month, you know, our construction managers, our other engineers, and the contractors sit down, go through the project. So every month we are forecasting how this project is moving what change orders are out there, what things could happen still. And so our high-end forecast for this project is about 584 million. And again, that's the general contractor's cost. And to date, we have, or the contractor has earned just over 250 million. So, you know, kind of nearing that halfway point. There are funding sources to build this project. Our participants, they had the option to bring cash up front to us, or they could join the pooled financing that the enterprise put together. And that pooled financing was the senior bond and the subordinate CWCB loan. And so as it turned out, about half of the money came from participant cash up front. So participants gave us 300 million and we put that into a trust, and we're drawing down on that as construction is going. And we're also drawing down on the revenue bonds, and we'll soon be drawing down on the CWCB loan. And so one quick note of that is because we did have about 200 million of these revenue bonds, we are paying interest on those revenue bonds now. We have been drawing those first, and then we'll be drawing down on the $90 million loan second. And so that will happen a couple months from now. So if it looks weird that we're asking for an increase to a loan that we haven't touched yet, that's sort of why, just our cash flow timing on that. Our project schedule is we started in August of 21. We're anticipating about a 4-year construction project. So we're about, you know, at that two-year mark, half-year mark. And through those 2 years, we are currently tracking about a month behind schedule. And our forecast looking forward is, yeah, we think there's probably going to be another month slip. So we're looking about 2 months behind schedule. A lot of that for this year, honestly, was an incredibly wet spring. The amount of rain that this site got, I mean, it was 20 inches in 1 month. That's unheard of. So of course, that happens when we are digging out the foundation, cleaning out down to the bedrock, and need a nice clean site. Of course, that's when we get an amazing spring. So that did impact us a little bit. And so you can see that we are about forecasting to be about 2 months behind schedule over the entire 4-year project. But again, I think that's still in the realm of doing pretty good. Good. So I won't go through all these numbers, but just different ways of looking at this. Our initial construction budget, again, this was the December 2019, as we're looking at it, again, pre-COVID, pre-inflation, pre-supply chain issues. For construction, we were looking about $609 million was what we would need. We're now projecting that's going to be about 665 to 682 for construction. Not all of that is the general contractor Barnard. And so the chart on the left kind of starts stacking up where we're looking at these price increases. So the blue, that's the construction change orders approved to date, not including the litigation delay, but really from the start of construction to date, we've approved just over 20 million of change orders. And then those change orders are classified to the right. And what I want to highlight here is the bulk of the change order that wasn't caused from the initial delay is really our existing conditions. In any dam project, that's your biggest unknown. You do your best to do borings and get geological data, but not until you're actually digging that out are you seeing what's really there. And so that risk falls on the owner of the project. The contractor, you know, you can't hold them responsible for the actual rock in the ground. That risk does belong to the owner. And so that's where we've seen the majority of our change orders. And these change orders have been, you know, it's not that we're necessarily like fighting them. It's just, yes, we know you had to dig out more and we directed you to dig out more here. We directed you to do that. About 6% of the change orders have been from owner's request. Hey, now that we're seeing this, can you please add this to your scope? And then 2% was just additional design development that as we're getting into this, our engineers are seeing something different and we're modifying the design a little bit. And on the chart on the bottom left, we are looking at projected change orders still. This is some change orders that are currently in negotiation with the contractor and what we are seeing down the road. And then we're also looking at, okay, if we are 2 months a little bit behind schedule, that's going to be an increased cost to engineering, construction management. Our environmental mitigation, some of our side agreements, so not related to Chimney Hollow, but our environmental mitigation agreements, namely on the west slope, some of those have increased that we're seeing. And then, of course, that litigation delay. And so right now that chart is, adding up to about 120 million. And when we started construction, we had 50 million, 48 million set aside. And so that is the increase that we are seeing. And I will also note that as we started construction, I mentioned we knew we had that large 22 million already, just in delaying construction. And at that time, the enterprise and the participants intentionally chose, well, let's keep our contingency what it was. Let's not seek that now and borrow that additional money that we will likely need, but we still don't need. Let's wait until, we get really through the dam foundation. That is our biggest risk. And then let's reestablish and reassess what we truly need. And so that's the point that we are now. On the environmental commitments, you can't do this. Obviously, you can't and you shouldn't do a large project like this without mitigating your impact to the environment and enhancing where you can. So on the east slope, we have the wetland bank, stream restoration. We will have recreation out at the site. So we are working in partnership with Larimer County to open up a very large open space. There will be recreation on reservoir. It will be non-motorized. So if any of you paddleboard, this is going to be like the best paddleboarding place in the Northern Front Range, if not all of, I won't say all of Colorado. But we also have investments to protect, that should say protect the Colorado River. And namely, that's the Colorado River Connectivity Channel, our different operational flush and flow commitments we've made, water we have dedicated, storage space that we've dedicated for use on the Colorado River. And so I know you heard a lot about the Colorado River Connectivity Channel yesterday, so I won't belabor the point, but we are really proud of this project. Through the permitting of Chimney Hollow, Northern Water, the subdistrict made a commitment to, in good faith, study, can we modify the dam of Windy Gap, the existing Windy Gap Dam? Can we reconnect that part of the river? And so with lots of partnerships, CWCB is a huge partnership in that. So we thank you for that. But it was a proud moment as in October, we did connect that channel, water did flow. And so now the first time in about 40 years, those two reaches of the Colorado River are connected through this connectivity channel. So I just want to end on that note because we are proud of that. But we also recognize that we can only do that because of the partnerships that we have and CWCB being a huge partner in that project. Keep going, lots of videos, a lot of information. There's a lot of information. This was me talking about this project fast, and I feel like I probably went too long. But if you have any questions, I am here. If you have any tough questions, some other people are here, and we will answer them as we can.
Slides from the finance section perspective. Project financials, assuming that the increase would go through. So just to bring things back to the 30,000 foot level, the total project cost is currently estimated at $682 million on the high end of the estimate. The loan with the increase and the 1% service fee would be $155,650,000, or about 23% of that cost. And the interest rate and the term would stay the same. The financial ratios indicate that the subdistrict is an average to strong borrower. And the collateral on this will continue to consist of a pledge of revenues subordinated to the senior bonds on this project. And that is a variance from policy number 5, but that's not unusual for large organizations that borrow from us that also have bonds tied to their project. We did that with Pueblo. We've done that with a couple other projects as well. So lastly, here is staff recommendation. It's as stated on the front page of the board memo. And then just one final note on the process we're recommending here. So if the board approves this loan increase recommendation today, this loan increase will be included in the projects bill in the next legislative session. And if that's approved and signed by the governor, then because we already have a contract in place, that authorization would be enough to modify the contract. So we would not come back to the board. Jonathan or anyone else from the district.
Okay, thank you, Cole. Are there questions? You just did. That's exactly what you did yesterday when you wanted to talk. Exactly. Hands in your pocket, son. Okay. Director Bruce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to ask the question. I was so bummed out that I missed the tour. Unfortunately, when you guys are doing, each pass of a lift with the asphalt core, how much height increase per pass are you doing on?
Inches.
It is a very fascinating project.
Jonathan, it's nice to see you back in front of the CWCB board. And
Yes, thank you.
apropos of nothing, I don't know if you heard, but Team Finance is hiring. So
Any other suggestions or comments, questions? Director Sakata?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cole, first a question for you. Does the term start when they make the first draw? Is that when the term starts, or how does that work?
No, so the interest would start accruing on that first draw when they make that first draw. The term would start when they close out the project. So that 30-year period
Oh,
would
interesting.
start with substantial completion in about 2.5 years.
Okay. And then, Jonathan, a question, or maybe Joe, for the construction. Is there any heat generated with all the weight of that asphalt being put down, and does the base of the asphalt expand because of the increase in weight?
Hello, everybody. This is Joe Donnelly for the record. I wasn't expecting any thermodynamics questions today, so I'm not entirely prepared for this. But when we put that hot asphalt down, it's 350 degrees typically, so it's very hot as we put it down. It is heavy, but the dam and the whole foundation is designed to support the weight, the massive weight of that embankment dam.
And a snowpack, upper South Platte was dry this year. Did you do any estimates of what potential yield would have been done? Would have been this past water season, if the project was completed?
We did not. We didn't simulate in our water resources modeling, like what if we had Chimney Hollow this year, but I will tell you, we probably, our CBT system is as full as it's ever been since the history of the project this year. Maybe all the reservoirs in the state are. So this would have been a very good year to fill Chimney Hollow if it were ready.
I have a materials question. So in linear construction, there's a lot of use of recycled asphalt. You said that this is a particular formulation for this purpose. Is there any opportunity to use recycled material?
Well, I would say this. So we're using for a dam construction. This is cutting edge technology, I would say, for asphalt core dam. So we follow our asphalt is not normal pavement asphalt. It's something we called hydraulic asphalt, which, as Jonathan was alluding, it's a very flexible, impermeable asphalt. So we've actually hired a company from Switzerland. They brought their own asphalt plant over, and we batch a very we have a very precise asphalt mix that we use to make sure that our dam will perform as intended, if that makes sense. So we do batch, we generate all of the materials for the project from an on-site quarry from below the reservoir footprint. So we don't have a visual scar. We're not hauling a lot of materials through that up on our local roads. So we batch all of the rock, we crush it to the right properties, and then we batch it all on site and provide it.
The answer is no.
Yeah, that's right. We're not using recycled asphalt. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I guess that's why Jonathan gave our presentation.
Questions? Director Sakata.
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of staff recommendation for agenda item 28.
Okay, we have a second from Director Brody.
Okay, that works.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions? Can say aye
Aye.
and oppose. Item B, Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District Northern Integrated Supply Project.
Right, thank you. Again, for the record, Cole Bedford, CWCB staff. So this is the second big projects bill loan item. And this is agenda item 20B, water project loan request for the Northern Integrated Supply Project. This is being undertaken by the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District through their NISP Water Activity Enterprise. And again, I'll just give you the highest level context for this one before handing it off. This is a large regional supply project in the Northern Front Range. It'll include 2 major new reservoirs, dozens of miles of pipeline and other infrastructure. The total project cost is currently estimated at just shy of $1.9 billion. That's billion with a B. The loan request amount on this is $101 million. Now that's only 5% of the project cost, but it's an important 5% of the cost. This recommendation is kind of a first step, which is why the loan terms are not set yet. So unlike the last recommendation, the borrower will need to submit some additional documentation in the future, and they'll come back to this board again for further authorization. Hand things off for project background, and I believe Stephanie Cecil is going to take this one.
Stephanie Cecil, for the record. I am a project manager with Northern Water, and I am actually the nerdy infrastructure engineer. So I will try to keep this somewhat brief, but want to make sure we give some background on what NISP is, why we're here to talk to you about this today, and we're just excited to be here to let you know a little more about this project. Why are we building NISP? This is an excerpt from our final environmental impact statement and our purpose and need. It's really to provide our project participants with 40,000 acre feet of a new, reliable yield of water. This helps with their current foreseeable projected demands and future demands, but I will say this does not meet all the demands of the Front Range, but we have these 15 different participants that we are trying to get water. That's really what the purpose of this project is in its entirety, is to provide water supply for these 15 different participants. You can see here, actually, let me go back, our 15 participants, ooh, wrong way. Okay, ooh, got excited. So it's a little small on here, but we have 15 different participants that are really spread out north and east of the Denver metro area. These are really smaller participants compared to our Windy Gap firming project that you saw. These are smaller communities and water districts, all the way up north to Fort Collins Loveland Water District, all the way out east to Fort Morgan and Morgan County Quality Water. We have out west to Left Hand Water District, and really down south all the way to Lafayette. So it's a wide range of participants that are in this project, and same as Windy Gap firming project, they are paying the freight for this entire project and moving it forward. And we're really here on behalf of these 15 different participants. It's doing wrong. Thank you. It's 40,000 acre feet per year to our participants. These are kind of the main infrastructure pieces of the project. We have Glade Reservoir, which is northwest of Fort Collins. That's going to store about 170,000 acre feet, a little bit bigger than Horsetooth Reservoir, if you're familiar with that one. It has about 1,600 surface acres. That water will go from the Poudre River up into Glade, and I'll get into a little more of those specifics in the next slide here. But we also have another reservoir that's going to store South Platte water. That's Gailton, northeast of Alt. That's 45,600 acre feet that we're looking at for that reservoir. And then we have about 80 miles of pipelines that are moving that water from the rivers to these reservoirs, from the reservoirs to our participants who need that water. Another piece for Glade Reservoir is we have to relocate about 7 miles of Highway 287. We found the perfect spot for the reservoir, except for the highway that's right in the middle of it. So we have to move that over. Been working with CDOT on that project a lot. And again, this project's paid for by those 15 different participants, and we have a current estimated cost of almost $2 billion for the project. And we've put in about $110 million to date. And again, that's all been paid for by these 15 participants over the last 20 years of permitting and final design that we've been working on. The zooming into that reservoir northwest of Fort Collins, just a little bit north of Ted's Place, if you're familiar with 14 and 287 up there. How we're getting water into Glade is we have an existing diversion structure that's on the Poudre River with the Poudre Valley Canal. We're going to make upgrades to that existing diversion structure, expand that diversion structure, make it fish passage friendly, and do some upgrades to that existing structure so that it can pass our water and the water that Poudre Valley Canal is already using through that diversion structure. We'll upgrade about 3 miles of the Poudre Valley Canal, and by gravity, water will come from the Poudre River into our proposed forebay. From the forebay, that's about 1,500 acre feet of storage that we'll have there. We'll have a 40,000 horsepower pump station, move that water from the forebay up into Glade Reservoir. And again, Glade, 170,000 acre feet of storage, about 290 feet tall. It's almost a mile across, so a little bit longer than our Chimney Hollow Dam, but not quite as tall. And this is more of kind of your standard clay core, earth and rock fill dam that we're looking at. And with the material that's really going to be available on site and about 18 million cubic yards of fill with that. In addition to having to move the highway, there's an existing canal through this section, the Monroe Canal. So with that, we're actually looking at burying that canal under the reservoir. It'll be a large 102-inch diameter pipe that'll be encased in concrete that we'll be able to go in, inspect as well. But that'll actually be underneath the reservoir through this part of the project and be able to still flow by gravity. Project, something that we're proud of is what we call our delivery conveyance refinement. So from Glade, we need to get this water to our different 15 participants. And the original method for that transfer of water was just pipelines. We were just going to move the water, all of it, through a dedicated pipeline system, through our northern tier pipeline, you can see on the top, and then south on our county line pipeline. But something that was added to the project is basically moving about 1/3 of our yield through the Poudre River. So we have 12 miles of the Poudre River. We have a commitment to move 18 to 25 CFS year round through the river, through this stretch, kind of to the southeast side of Fort Collins. So we'll be doing that as part of the project. This helps eliminate some existing dry up points within the Poudre River. We actually had a new Colorado law that was required, the Reservoir Release Bill that was passed in 2018 to help shepherd that water and make sure it's safe through that 12 miles of the river. Briefly on Gailton Reservoir, again, that's the reservoir kind of northeast of Alt. It's going to store South Platte water. This one is a little bit smaller. It's about 45,000 acre feet of storage. It's only a 75-foot tall dam. Whereas when you go out to see Glade Reservoir, if you're looking, you can kind of see this makes sense that you can build a dam right in this section. You can kind of see where we're going to tie into the rock. If you go out on Highway 14, it's real hard to tell where this reservoir is going to be just because it's pretty flat out there. But we do have a spot where we can kind of have a longer embankment dam that'll be out there. Similar to Glade, it'll be more use of materials on site, clay fill or clay core that's going to be out there. This one actually has about the same amount of surface acres as Glade, but less storage just because it's shallower. We have purchased all the land that's out here for Gailton Reservoir. Again, this is storing South Platte water. So with that water, we're going to be moving water from the South Platte into Gailton and then sending that water from Gailton to New Cache and Larimer and Weld and do an exchange with them so we can take their Poudre River water, put it up in Glade, and they'll get the South Platte water. So really through this, we're looking at kind of encouraging agriculture through this program. We want to make sure that we can utilize these exchanges into the future. It's about half the yield of our NISP project. So this is about 20,000 acre feet of yield. And our Poudre River water rights storing in Glade is about half the yield of the project. So this is really important that kind of in perpetuity, we need that ability to exchange upon water that's being utilized out here for agriculture. This is one that's been going on for about 2 decades. It's an important piece that we actually think through this permitting process, we have a better project than when we first started. We've gone through, I won't hit on every single one of these, but we started the federal NEPA process in 2004 through work with the Army Corps of Engineers who was leading that process. We had our state Fish and Wildlife and Mitigation Enhancement Plan approved in 2017, and with the CWCB here approving that as well, working with CPW. We had our state reservoir release bill that I touched on earlier, and our state 401 water quality certification, really lots of coordination with the state with this project throughout the years, leading to our 404 permit and record of decision in 2022, late 22, which we were really excited about. And we've really kind of kicked off or checked off a lot of those state permits. We also have a Larimer County 1041 permit that we got back in 2020. We're proud of that one too, and have a good relationship with Larimer County with a lot of that infrastructure that we'll be building. It's in Larimer County and Weld County as well. Permitting slide. Again, that Clean Water Act, Section 404 permit, that's the big one that took 20 years. That was led by the Army Corps. We had a lot of cooperating agencies kind of throughout: EPA, BLM, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. There is Preble's Meadow jumping mouse impacts through the site that we have a biological opinion and work that's set aside to help mitigate those impacts to Preble's Meadow jumping mouse. CDOT is obviously a really big cooperating agency with the movement of the highway that we have to do. We had a lot of different alternatives that were screened. And I think the main thing I wanted to point out here is that the no action alternative that was looked at for this is basically 60,000 acre feet of agricultural dry up. If we don't have a reservoir, we don't have a new water right that's out there, then how can these 15 participants get water? And really looking at that was ag dry up is buy dry is the main option that's out there. It's kind of the past history of NISP, what we plan on building, but wanted to touch on a little bit of what we're doing right now with the Northern Integrated Supply Project. This is a rendering for the new highway that's running through here. As I mentioned, Highway 287 is right in the middle of Glade Dam. So it is really the critical path to get Glade built is to move the highway. We anticipate the highway construction taking about 2 to 2.5 years to move that highway over. And then at the same time, we have about 2 years of work on Glade that we can do before we need the highway moved out of the way to complete that work. So we anticipate starting both of these really at the same time, the highway and Glade. Glade, we anticipate 4 years or a little more for construction. So we really need to move forward on both of these. So we're looking at 100% design being completed by the end of 2024 for both the highway and for Glade. And we've actually hired a contractor already through a construction management general contractor procurement for the highway to really help us look at how can we build this most efficiently, quickly, and in coordination with CDOT. This is a project that, though we are not necessarily the road building experts, we will be the owner for building Highway 287 in close coordination with CDOT, then we'll pass that highway over to them at the end. So we have a really good core team with CDOT. We have a good contractor that's very experienced in CDOT requirements and a good engineer. I will mention that we are looking at recycled asphalt for the Highway 287 construction as kind of an innovation that's come up. So
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. So we're in the process of completing land purchases with the highway. And again, getting that buy off with CDOT to make sure they're happy with everything that we're doing with that highway. Then Glade unit, again, 100% designed by the end of the year or into 24, working a lot with the state engineer's office to make sure all of the dam safety folks are happy with exactly how we're designing that, exactly what kind of that subgrade and rock underneath is looking at, what our grouting program is, make sure that this high hazard dam is safe. So we're really working through that process with them and looking at hiring a contractor next year. What we're working on is our allotment contracts. So really trying to narrow in what are the project benefits that each of these different participants get compared with what are their obligations to pay for this project, both in construction and operational costs long-term. So some of the provisions that we do plan on including in these allotment contracts and will be part of them is the allotee revenue pledge is on their O&M stream. So that's payable in advance of any other debt obligations that they have within their enterprise, as well as take or pay provisions. So even if we don't have water available yet in Glade, even if we have bad years of a lot of drought, even if participants are not needing this water yet, they still have to pay for it. So it's not based on how much water they're ordering each year. It's based on you're paying for it whether you take it or not. We also have step up and reallocation requirements. So we have these 15 different allottees within the project, and all these participants are required to accept a pro rata share if we have any default units. And we're really working through what exactly that looks like, but that will be a tenant within these allotment contracts. our finance plan. We say this project is around $1.9 billion right now. But we know that'll likely be a $2 billion project by the time we get into construction in 2025. So it's an expensive project. These 15 different participants are smaller than some of the other projects that we have. So we're really looking at how can we make this project affordable for our participants and trying to look out in their best interest for what all of our different options are for sources for funding. So that includes cash to the table. I think with our Windy Gap firming project, almost half of those participants brought at least some cash to the table. I think with our participants, we're not anticipating that. We have a few that might bring some, but it's really mostly going to be these other financing sources and funding sources that we're talking about here. We were really excited just recently in the last few months. We got invited to apply for a WIFIA low interest loan program. That's something we've been working with the EPA on over the last few years, done preliminary applications, and now are at the point where next year we anticipate applying for that basically $1 billion loan for the project. They've actually reserved that for us. So it's something we're really excited to get into next year with that full application. Obviously, CWCB, we're here today to talk to you about this loan opportunity for the project. And then the rest of that will really be taxes and municipal bonds that we're looking at and any sort of grant program. So if y'all know any, please let us know that we're looking at for the project. We're here today to talk to you about where we're at with the intent of starting construction here in 2025 for all of Northern Integrated Supply Project. Again, we got that record of decision back in 2023. We've been working on progressing the final design of different components of the project, namely that Highway 287 relocation, but also our Glade Reservoir piece, and then a little bit of our conveyance pipeline as well. We have some areas that are in quickly developing areas where we have our permit for a certain location, and we're really trying to finalize some design on pipelines and start that piece as well in 2025 to kind of get in the ground ahead of some development that's occurring. We also have Gailton pipelines and reservoirs a little bit further out. We're planning on starting that once we get more into the construction of Glade and closer to the finalization of that. So with that, this is the last slide that I have for you here. I'm guessing Cole might have a few more for you, and then we'll get into questions. Thank you.
My last slide here, just the staff recommendation, and just to reiterate the process one more time. So this loan request will be included in the projects bill if approved by you all today, signed by the governor next spring. And it would come back to this board at some point in the future when the NISP project is ready for a full feasibility study submitted to the loan program. We would look at their rates and terms at that time.
Could you tell us what dollar amount is allocated to the 287 move in the total cost of the project?
Definitely. The total cost of 287 right now is about 120 million. And again, that's fully paid for by the 15 participants. That's not coming from any sort of CDOT funds. It is part of the project.
And are you able to get as low a loan rate as CDOT might be able to get for that linear construction?
For that project, we are looking at a TIFIA program.
Okay,
so
which
we
is what
mentioned-
CDOT uses.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Thank
that's
you very
the
much.
transportation side, but
Right.
yes.
Thanks.
Wow, it's hard to grasp that amount. Did you think about the idea? One of my favorite things when I go to aquariums is you walk in these glass tunnels. You could put 287 through a glass tunnel. That would be super cool. No, just kidding. I know. 2 billion just went to what?
Yeah,
35 billion
when it's icy.
Yeah, yeah. But that would be a first in the nation.
We did consider a ferry system, as well, but I think it'd be a little bit slow to go across the whole reservoir. It's about 5 miles. So
And then another humorous comment was thanks for the tour. I really appreciate it. It is like you talked about when you go there and you see um, the canyon there, so to speak, how an off-channel site just it makes sense. But what's with the rock there? What that you have to be worried about? Is there some graffiti rock or what is that thing that you're determining what to do with?
It's a good question. So Haystack Rock is located. If you went to Wyoming or CSU, then you might be familiar with that. It is a favorite graffiti spot for lots of folks. It's probably going to be, I think, at our maximum water level, about 100 feet underneath the water. We've asked if anyone wants it, but because it is kind of a vandalism graffiti spot, CDOT doesn't want it. Larimer County doesn't necessarily want it at their visitor center that we're going to have. That's going to be up kind of in the recreation area of Glade. So we have not figured out what to do to Haystack Rock. I think a scuba diving spot, a dive spot for people might be a little murky water, but.
I drive that highway all the time. I think it's better put underwater.
Noted.
And I think this board had the opportunity to review the wildlife mitigation plan, and that was really interesting to review some of those facts. So thanks for the work that you did in that. A question that I should probably know the answer to, just a general question for the allotments. So each participant will have a certain amount of storage space. I guess this goes for both projects, a certain amount of storage space. What is their responsibility for the evaporative losses? Is it based on their total storage space or the amount of water that they have stored at that time?
That when you're in a room with 15 participants and their attorneys are the reason why we do not have allotment contracts yet. So that operation, those are all being worked out of exactly what to do with that. It's likely going to be, a pro rata share of what they actually have in there.
Right.
If you used all your water, you can't be charged for evaporation because it's not in there, but
Right.
those details are working out through that allotment contract process.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
So when you were talking about the structure of the payments from your allottees, I would, as an allottee, find it terribly scary to be responsible for the full amount of the loan should several participants step away. Is that likely to happen? I mean, in the discussion, in negotiating these contracts, that must be a point of fear for a lot of your participants.
Yes, and so again, those terms aren't set out yet. What we did on Chimney Hollow Reservoir and when you got firming allotment contracts was there was a cap of your assessment can't go up by 35% because of that feature. And that number is derived from working with municipal advisors and what the investors would settle. But yes, it's understood that if everyone dropped out and I'm the only one standing, I can't be legally held responsible for that. And so there is a cap, and for when you got firming, it was 35.
You mentioned this, that no action alternative. How many thousands of acres the Ag Drive was there again?
It was 60,000.
60,000 acres. And that's a number even hard for me to grasp in the sense that our farming operation is considered large, and yet we only farm about 3,000 acres. So just to give you some perspective of how many acres that really is, that's a lot of farming communities. So thank you.
Recommendation.
Move staff recommendation for agenda item 20B.
Okay. Appreciate. Trying. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Motion say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both. Thank you, all three of you, actually.
Thank you.
Okay, are people doing all right? Need a break? until 10. Let's do 10:15, just 5 minutes. So it never seems to get up.
In progress.
Just a public service announcement. I recommend that all of you stop at Walmart or wherever you get your clothespins and get them today, because this is a hot fashion craze that is going to sweep the Rocky Mountains, and you'll soon not be able to find a clothespin anywhere. They do something too. They make you smarter. It's not just good looking. It's functional. 21 operational planning update.
Anna Moss, CWCB staff for the record. So this is the operational planning update, just kind of a highlight reel for you of progress that we've made behind the scenes so that you know that since Greg Belomo, helped facilitate all these conversations, we haven't just, out of sight, out of mind. Things are continuing to progress. Looks like I have slides to advance. Yes, there we go. Perfect. So what's happened behind the scenes a little bit is we've updated the calendar. We went over that with you all at the workshop. And so we've outlined, what happens at each meeting, and then that cadence of the typical events at, the ones that are sort of standalone things. So for instance, at this November meeting will always be the project spill NRI conversations. You'll always get your annual financial statements. So we've got that outlined. The other thing that we're narrowing in on is the onboarding and offboarding checklist based on that conversation that we had. So really appreciate the input there. So we're working to refine that as well. And then we have made some adjustments as we're going. I think Director Felt, you mentioned this yesterday, the public comment, we've got the more dynamic Zoom option now to hopefully facilitate easier public comment during every agenda item and or at the very end of the meetings. So those are things that are happening. I'm going to turn it to Russ. He's going to talk to you about the guidebook, and then I'll come back up here and just talk about some next steps and get a little bit of feedback from you on some future meetings.
CWCB staff for the record, and thank you very much for not making me wear the clothespin. I appreciate that. I'm super scared. I'm gonna keep an eye on, yes. So you've heard a little bit about this, and I spoke to it at the C9 Summit, and I know that Greg Belomo had brought it up too, but this is the artist formerly known as the Roundtable Handbook. And what we realized is we've had, 18 years of Roundtable and IBCC, but we never really had a guiding document. We had all these questions that were coming in, especially it seemed heightened through COVID and moving to Zoom, and we wanted to answer those. And in the process of thinking that through, we also got the DNR Policy Handbook. So we're just kind of rebranding this as the CWCB Guide, because we started to draft it. We're like, well, this is really just the same onboarding stuff that we give the board. And to be transparent, as probably the board would like to know all the information the same as Roundtables and IBCC would. So it's a one-stop shop for how we operate. It covers the onboarding, the operations, the board's authority. Those are things that we talked a lot about and that we workshopped. It talks about our funding and, when we think about WSRF and how we interact with our roundtables, even down to, do board members vote on the roundtable? Those kind of questions that never seem to come up and aren't answered, but, we're just going to have a little bit of a FAQ in there. And so it will kind of speak to the state, DNR, CWCB level policy. So state policy might be things like open meetings law, and DNR things in the handbook, and CWCB, just all the things that we go through that are more in the minutia. So we intend to roll out a roadshow, because I think the responsible thing to do is, I don't know how many roundtables are even fully aware. We've talked about it, but have read the DNR handbook, let alone thinking about the CWCB guide. And I imagine there will be some questions and thoughts, especially if what we're writing there conflicts with what they think it works, or how things work. But I was reminded, even with Wendell Kuntz, who was here earlier yesterday, that it is helpful. Like, it takes time in the middle of a roundtable meeting to kind of stop and correct something with someone coming in with a different idea or opinion about how things operate. And this isn't really to micromanage anybody, but just to have one common document that people can go back to for the answers. And hopefully that doesn't create any misalignment with what's written in a roundtable handbook, for example, but I imagine there might be some subtleties. But in general, this is, really just to be a backstop for commonly asked questions, maybe something we could actually print and hand out to people. So we're going to workshop some of those things with the roundtables and maybe highlight some of the big elements that we think in there. One of those would be mentioning the DNR handbook, which will be kind of embedded in this or linked or as an attachment, or all of the above. But things like we spent so much time talking with the roundtables a couple years back about a code of conduct. I think as recently as maybe it was last September, November meeting, Director Brown had asked us to kind of make sure the roundtables were fully aware of like core requirements and open meeting law requirements. So that's all now covered and really embodied in the DNR handbook. So things like DNR Public Service Code of Ethics, CORA requirements, open meeting law is all in that handbook. So we'll cover that. Some other things I think that we intend to cover are project database updates. That's something we've gotten a lot of comments about, and how do we do that? And I think we probably have some room to make some updates there too, but we'll just try to walk through that process on what we do and don't take per some of the changes that we've made in recent board meetings. And then roundtable and IBCC operations would be a piece of that. So kind of thinking about, best practices. So when we have something that comes up a lot are just, roundtable elections and terms, and do we really have term limits? And maybe the answer is somewhere in between, like we have kind of these 5-year terms, but especially in trying to be more transparent and create more access and more opportunity, just at least being transparent about that election process, noticing it in some way, which some roundtables just do differently right now. So just trying to set some kind of best practices standard, highlight some of the forms that are out there. So one thing that's come up, I think in the entire, 6 years or so I've been at CWCB, we've had one legislative appointment change, and now like currently we have 3, and that's raised a lot of questions. So just where we have forms of how to do this and what that process looks like, we'll include that. Draft scope of work for recorder, things like that have come up a lot, and roundtable members have thought it's been helpful, but as roundtable chairs change, they don't always know that those things exist. Links to legislation, IBCC membership, what that looks like, Water Supply Reserve Fund, how that operates, and really the roundtable's role in that, as well as IBCC's role when it comes to making changes with the board. So those are some of the elements that we'll include, and just as a rough timeline to show you, I think we're going to try to kick off this roadshow, and we'll start working on what that schedule looks like with roundtable starting in January. The goal is to maybe have, we'll highlight these elements, but then maybe, and I would hope that we could kind of try to target the March board meeting to have a draft out. I imagine there would be some back and forth, especially some of those things we may have just gotten the wording wrong and need to change. So I added some level of kind of back and forth comment period with roundtable and IBCC. And then our goal would be to have a pretty close to final draft by June, and then kind of fold some of that information back to the board in July, and ultimately kind of codify that at the September meeting, which kind of is a nice cycle of life with just making good on our ops plan. So that's kind of the game plan for how we're going to roll that out. And I will turn it back over to Anna.
So we talked about, I guess, the CNN Summit was a big event this week, and so we're making progress on that action. Also, preparing for a joint board meeting with the Water Quality Control Commission in January. So we've got some draft agenda ideas floating around there. But this is where I was looking for feedback from you all also as we look ahead into the next year. Wanted to know if you would prefer more joint meetings. There was an idea of maybe we should meet with CPW as a potential option for a joint meeting. I don't know if you want to try to focus one joint meeting per year and we would push that one out further, or if more than one is what you would like, or it can be dynamic too, kind of as our agendas come together. So I'd just love to collect your ideas on that.
I think that, well, it'd be interesting to understand what a joint meeting means. We did one with the Ag Commission last spring. I think stay together. Maybe it's half a day and a dinner.
Yep, half a day.
That seems like a pretty good time, half a day, and maybe some social time afterwards.
Yep.
I have heard from Dallas May, who is the CPW or the Parks and Wildlife Commission chair, that he would like to meet with us, or they would like to meet with us, and I would like to do that too if we can. And seems like sometimes it's just circumstantial. Are we in the same town? Because we do overlap every month, it seems like. So be good, but I also think if both are going to work out, you know, it's convenient or whatever, that I think it'd be good to do it.
Okay.
That the timing would also depend upon how big our agenda is in terms of substantive work. But I like the idea of the half day and social time. Unfortunately, the half day is usually when we're all racing out the door to get home, right? And so maybe we turn it around and do, you know, come in that morning, have a half day afternoon, and then a social opportunity, and then the full day the next day. A thought.
I just want to put out there that I think y'all are pretty popular, and the reality is we could probably schedule joint meetings like every meeting. I mean, there's so much overlap in what we do when you consider, I mean, even the State Land Board, GOCO, I mean, really, DOLA. I mean, there's so many different entities that we could possibly talk with. I think from a planning standpoint, I think it might make sense to try and, you know, say, you know, 2 times a year or, you know, 1 time a year. I think is hard. I mean, that's hard if we have the opportunity, but I like having some structure or routine around it if we can.
Yeah.
And maybe try and target months that tend to be a little bit lighter agenda wise. Do we have those?
Right,
I know.
I would think March
Yeah.
might be a
No,
little
I mean, this is
challenging just because that's when got the
grants.
really heavy water plan and WSRF grant
Uh-huh.
agenda. So
That's
perhaps we just, as the agendas come together, maybe, and we can look at our annual calendar too, and maybe
Yeah.
sort of highlight when to try to target those, if that makes sense to the board. And we'll just try to work in 2 per year as we update that annual calendar.
Yeah.
And looking at the calendar of our meetings, maybe late summer, early fall would be good with CPW.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Russ, just a question for you. Is Water Quality Control Division the only joint meeting that we have in the water plan? Are there any other?
Correct. That's the only one that we
That's
have.
it. Okay.
And it would make, I think that a lot of the tours that are available are super valuable. And instead of trying to host a joint meeting, you know, separately, if we could time those meetings, because like if we do a tour of the connectivity channel and could have a half a day with CPW with some kind of an event, you know, versus a formal sit down, you know, maybe that could help to balance and also give opportunity for socializing. But do it in the context of something not so formal. And I think it would depend on which agency and which time
Yep.
to line that up, that it would make sense, but just a thought.
To me, it's hard to sort of evaluate this in isolation without kind of seeing the rest of all the other activities. To me, it would be really helpful to kind of lay out our standard work across the calendar. I mean, there's certain things that we know we do, like we know we have finance committee in September. We know we have, you know, certain grant approvals or certain other approvals at certain times a year. It would help to kind of map that out, see what are the must-dos, and then we can look at where are the like-to-dos and how do they fit in and how do we prioritize?
And that is, I believe, the task that we're working through with the calendar. So maybe we can bring that back when we
Yeah.
have that mapped out.
Yeah, in fact, if any board members want to preview that, just email me and I can send you the draft that we're working on right now. But that is being worked into that guidebook.
If you wouldn't mind just sending that out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then I think too, this idea that these groups all move around like we do and we're going to overlap. I don't remember if the Ag Commission one fully planned or it was somewhat circumstance that we were going to be in the same community, but you know, it doesn't have to be a half a day. It could be an hour, like 4 to 5, and then kind of thing. I just think it's really great to cross-pollinate. At the end of the Water Congress, yeah, sure. And she goes, let's go to the Parks and Wildlife Commission and have lunch. So I go over there and then next thing I know, Dallas is like, hey, why don't you talk to us for, you know, we got a light agenda and So spontaneously, I had like 15 minutes of about how our roles are really need to be more integrated and how they overlap and everything. So just point being, I think it doesn't have to be a really heavy agenda with a lot of presentations. It could just in the same place. Let's get together, just have a little formal thing and then socialize and, just work on relationships. There's a lot of value there. And as we've seen, there's a lot of ex officio members that kind of have to attend to these different groups anyway. So I would look for those types of opportunities too.
Okay. That calendar draft to you all and just email me back if you've got comments, and then we'll keep us a little bit dynamic is what it sounds like. So
Thanks, Russ. Item 22, Water Supply Reserve Fund applications, and we have one for the Miners Trail Short Ditch Extension. Ben Wade.
Thank you. For the record, Ben Wade, CWCB staff, presenting this agenda item. Only have one presentation today, but overall in this round, we had 5 applications. 2 of those were statewide account requests. So the one I'm presenting today is the aging infrastructure request. We had another drought resiliency request. But 4 of those WSRF applications were in the director's report and approved by Director Riss back on October 30th. So today's application is an application from Delta County. And this is the project that Wendell Coons had mentioned in his remarks yesterday to the board. So I felt like my job was easy because he presented everything, but it truly is a project that the county is very excited about, but also Short Ditch Extension Short Ditch Company is also excited about as well. We did fund, or this board approved funding for another part of the short ditch in the last board meeting. And so this board meeting, if you could see on the map there, the section in red is what's going to be worked on for this round of funding. But they're excited because last bit of funding from September and then this round of funding is the first improvements to this ditch since it was first dug in 1890. So they're very excited about that. But there is a safety concern that the county has for their pedestrians and bicyclists along Highway 92 when they're trying to get to the high school and recreation district for several activities. And so rather than people walking or biking along the shoulder of Highway 92, they want to make improvements to Miners Trail, and part of these improvements would be placing it in the ditch right away along Miners Ditch. So piping that would help everyone involved, just having a safe access to those activities, but also for the irrigators, just getting those benefits from less seepage and a reduction in erosion, salinity into the Colorado River. So this is one of those where the total project is much larger. It's about 2.7 million. The WSRF portion of this is only providing piping, materials, and installation. So that's why on the summary sheet we have that quote unquote WSRF total project cost of just over 300,000. And so again, this has been a project that the county is very much excited for in the ditch company and a priority for the Gunnison Roundtable. With us today on Zoom is Wendell and also Robbie LaValle with Delta County. And so Robbie and Wendell, if you could unmute yourselves, and that would be great. So we'll be available if the board has any questions for us today.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
Commissioner Wendell Cook is here, ready to answer any questions. Robbie had stepped away for some training on the quarter requests.
For Commissioner Coons?
I'm here.
Yes.
I just have a question on that sharp 90-degree turn in the pipe, whether there's any way to round it, whether that's going to create some reliability problem.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Wendell.
Very good, thank you. If you look on the map there, this project for the piping itself is on the east side. On that segment 1 in red, it's about 2,000 feet. The trail is shown in 5 different segments of different colors. That 90-degree turn will just be trailed. There's no ditch there.
So the 90-degree turn doesn't indicate that the piping is turning, it's just the trail?
Correct.
Thank you.
The pipe would be, you see H Hill there on the right-hand side of the photograph? That's the ditch segment through there. We do have multiple stakeholders here, including the Delta County School District, the North Fork Pool Park and Recreation District, the Nature Connection, of course, Delta County, and the town of Hotchkiss. So we have multiple stakeholders all contributing. Certainly the amount requested from WSRF won't be the whole piping project. NRCS is also weighing in, working on that simultaneously.
Sounds like a great community supported project. Is really great when we can get these additional benefits out of water infrastructure project. There a motion on the staff recommendation? I don't know, Director Anderson, if you're if you're available. Motion, Director Sakata with a second. Other comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Oh, congratulations, Wendell, and thanks for being with us today. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody.
Update on water loss reporting.
Vice Miller, CWCB staff for the record. And today we're here with an update on water loss. House Bill 1051 requires water use and efficiency reporting. This applies to covered entities. So those are water providers serving more than 2,000 acre feet per year of water. And the first 1051 guidelines and reporting portal were created and approved by the CWCB board in 2011. Last year, we came to you with an update to those guidelines and we transitioned to a new reporting portal in 2022. And throughout this time, water loss reporting has always been included in the guidelines for 1051 reporting. It wasn't actually technically enforced in the portal. Of legislation, the Senate Bill 23-213, or what was more commonly known of as the land use bill, really focused some scrutiny and brought the focus to water loss reporting because it was in that bill. It would have required annual water loss audits and third-party validation of those water loss audits. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. Water loss reporting is actually already required by our criteria and guidelines. However, the legislation helped us recognize the need to align our criteria with our reporting portal. So it's clear that water loss reporting is required and that we actually ensure that we're getting the information. Today, we're seeking to align the guidelines in the portal. The second part of that legislation would have required third-party validation of water loss audits. And though we have been leaders in our voluntary water loss reporting through the Colorado Water Loss Initiative and the important work that Kevin's been leading, mandating this third-party validation needs some additional research before CWCB staff feel it can advise the board to do so. And we feel it should stay a voluntary option for now. Has been a part of the guidelines for a long time. As I mentioned, our portal was not really aligned with that. And while staff can generally make updates to the portal without coming to the board for approval, we felt it was important to come to the board today and speak publicly about this change as it was in legislation last session. So we're looking now to update the portal and require water loss reporting using the American Water Works Association's M36 water loss methodology. And this change would help us to improve the consistency and quality of our 1051 data, and the software to conduct the audit is free and downloadable, and we plan to offer a 1-year grace period to covered entities to comply. So they would have to comply by June of 2024, that reporting deadline. We also offer training on how to conduct water loss auditing through the Colorado Water Loss Initiative to support our water providers as they make that transition. And I'm going to turn it over now to Kevin to tell you a little bit more about that water loss initiative and the progress to date.
Reedy, CWCB staff. Here we go. Which way do I go? That went too far. There we go. Come on. As you know, we've been doing this Colorado Water Loss Initiative, and it's still the largest voluntary program in the states right now. And we've had a lot of good success, starting around 2018 till this next phase 2 is going to go till 2024. And we've really trained approximately about 90 utilities and over 200 utility staff on this. And we've built a lot of capacity in water loss best practices, illustrated the need for direct technical assistance, which we are going through right now as well, highlighted main issues that utilities need assistance on. And really showed the value of this third-party level 1 validation. And just to kind of go a little bit more into that, it's really a trained auditor and validator looking through this stuff and saying, hey, this doesn't look right. How'd you get this number? Or how are you assessing the value of this water you're losing? What are you using for that metric? And it goes into volume and the 3 V's, volume, value, and validity. And so it gets you to a place where you can say you feel okay about your data, and it gives you a score. And what we've seen across across the nation and other states who have required this, that they've seen a really initially a big decrease in self-reported scores, because of course everybody's perfect. You're like, we're doing great, and then somebody looks at it and says, maybe not so much, but you're not doing bad. Hey, this is great. So we've seen that. And in our own data as well, we've seen some increases now in the validity score. So it's getting better, and it takes roughly 3 to 5 years really for a utility to start seeing the benefits of looking at it through a third-party validator lens. And so right now through this program, our auditors, our consultants are looking through this and helping folks grade their scores and look at this validation. So now as we go into this phase 3, which you guys had approved yesterday as part of this, and this has always been kind of the plan anyway. We starting in 2016 there was a bill that came through with very similar language to the bill from from last year as well. Kind of set me on the course saying, this is going to keep on coming back. Let's get something going. Let's get people prepared for if it does become a requirement, we're going to be ready. And so phase 3, it kind of goes into this a little bit further into this, and it continues the core training areas that we've been doing, because we've been seeing a lot more people coming back from staff turnover. Mainly, really, we've had a whole utility team say, hey, we have all new people now. Can we come back and do this basic thing again? So we want to kind of continue that thing. We want to continue the direct technical assistance, and we want to create this water loss validator training program. And it's always kind of been in the cards. It's really the next evolution of a program like this, and we've seen this in Georgia and California, recently Indiana. And that's what we're going to be looking at in this next phase, is kind of seeing how these other states are doing it, and how much it's costing them and all those things and what kind of value they're getting out of it. We've seen that in Georgia with some research for sure, and Tennessee as well. We've seen some the value of their training their folks up and having third-party validators. They kick out a lot less of those audits annually. So meaning that there's more audits that are coming through that make sense. And they're kicking out less than, let's say, California or other states, because they're not maybe doing as rigorous a job of that. So in tandem with this, we are kicking off a water loss committee, trying to institutionalize this across the state with a lot of our participants that have come through the program. We got a lot of people interested in this, kicking off in January 2024, and really kind of shaping this reporting and validation requirements, as we go forward. And if they become requirements, we want to have the people on the ground from the utilities doing this, helping us do this work, because they're directly affected by it, and really institutionalizing this further. And as part of that validator training program, and right now, of course, it's voluntary. We're not going to cross that bridge yet, but we want to really define what that program looks like, develop the curriculum, and then implement the validator training and get people trained up so they can start doing these things. And as we're asking you to, make a requirement for these attaching these audits to the 1051, we are seeing these coming in, but still not as much. We've got a lot of people doing them through our program as well. So we're getting some good data there, but we feel that it's going to be really important to have this as part of an annual data collection effort. And I think that's about it. Actually, I'm going to be on a panel with folks from Georgia, Texas, Tennessee in a couple of weeks at the North American Water Loss Conference. So we're all going to be talking about how we do things. So it'll be really fascinating to hear from them, especially Georgia. They're the granddaddies of this whole thing. They've been doing it longer than anybody, and they've been doing a really good job of it. But they do it through their kind of more water quality group there. But just fascinating stuff. It'll be a good conversation to have, I think. And I think I'm going to turn it back over to Kat.
The next steps. If the board approves today's action item, staff will make the proposed changes in the 1051 portal to align it with the requirement and the guidelines. The staff will then conduct outreach to water providers to let them know about this change and to message the 1-year grace period, as well as the training opportunities with the water loss initiative. And staff will continue evaluating whether third-party validation should be a requirement down the road, using the work of the Colorado Water Loss Initiative to help scope that out. And we'll keep the board apprised of this work. At a minimum, we're targeting November of 2025 to come back to you with some more information on this. And when we do check back in, we'll provide what information we have on the costs, impacts, and recommendations that we've developed with regards to third-party validation. So with that, the staff recommendation is that CWCB board should approve the proposed updates to the 1051 database for mandatory water loss reporting requirements.
Kevin, your questions on this?
The board approves the staff recommendation for item number 23,
Okay.
update on water loss reporting.
Okay. Shay? Question from Director Sakata.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So after the grace period is over, what recourse do you have if they don't comply?
Well, we've been working under the assumption for when the original bill was brought forth in 2010. It was tied to state funding like water efficiency plans are. So it's really the only hook that we have, since we're not really a regulatory agency. Right. But yeah, but I think along with this too is I'd really like to be running like a parallel kind of a stream, with folks that maybe aren't big enough to have to send this in, right? I think we've got a really good group of people that are actually smaller than the covered entity status, and they're doing the really good work on this stuff, and they find it really valuable. So we'd like to be bringing that in. So beyond that, beyond state funding, that's about the only hook we really have, and we're going to make sure that we've got that tied up as well too, and make sure that's the appropriate way to do it.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Is public comment. Anyone contact you, Viola? No? Okay. Is there anybody online who was wishing to make public comment today?
Again, thanks and congratulations to the staff and the changes you're making, Director Riss. I forgot to mention in my report that Cole, I was able to, when I was in Grand Junction, Cole was there, attended the conference with me. He didn't dress up in a costume though. I was really disappointed. So he was very respectful and everything. And then also on the northern tour or the central tour, I had the opportunity to sit with him on the bus and really got to learn a lot from him and gained a lot of knowledge from visiting with him. So I'm excited by his taking on the new role. So congratulations, Cole. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is available and it is out in the hallway. If you would like to stay and eat, you're welcome to. If you need to get on the road, that is also acceptable. I think they are salads or grain bowls or something. So probably not something you could eat while you're driving, but totally up to you.
Okay. For the good of the order. Turn.
I move we adjourn.
Second. All right.